Oops, wrong button. All right, here we go. This is the first book in the A Matter of series. I know we did the second one. Quick review. As far as I did not find her murderer yet. I will have to do more Googling for that. But this woman was murdered by McGray. And yeah, they found her murderer, so. And she wasn't even supposed to be hitchhiking. According to this, she was offered, she was actually staying in Halifax to do like a babysitting job, and then they were going to pay for her a ticket on the train to send her to Yarmouth. But the jackass babysitters didn't give her the ticket, so she had to hitchhike. So I had these little cocksuckers bothered to fulfill their end of the bargain and buy her the train ticket to come down to Yarmouth on the train instead of hitchhiking. She would be alive because she wouldn't have run into McGray that night. So I, 100%, besides McGray, blame this little cocksucking little twat-wad babysitter who would not bother, who was such an, I hope bad things happen to them. Because they offered her a train ticket to babysit for 2 days and then to come to Yarmouth, but they didn't fulfill their promise, and she ended up murdered because of that. Because these little chockwackles were fucking, I don't even have words for how angry that makes me. Can you imagine? Like, because of their cheapness, their inconsiderateness, she is dead. I hope she haunts them. Honestly, I'm so pissed off at that. Anyway, that was A Matter of Mystery. We just finished that. Sorry, it's shitty. I can't read out loud, but hey, if you're here, you're not interested in the reading, you're interested in the stories. Now, here we go. This was the first book in the A Matter of series, and it was done by the law class, 1992, so I guess this was 1993? Yep, 93. So this is 92. This is the first one. And we are opening up with The Murder of John Haslin, Pubnico County, Yarmouth, August 21st, 1861. Rage at this. Anyway, one of the first murder trials in the history of Yarmouth County was the murder of John Haslin of Pubnico by his brother James Haslin, August 21st, 1861. John and James Haslin owned a farm about 300 acres in Pubnico. They lived together in the same home. They had another brother who had died a number of years earlier. Neighbors recall that the two brothers had very different personalities. John was very social and lively, while his brother James tended to be reserved and quiet. John, however, was also known to become fairly lively when he drank. James, on the other hand, was a very sober man, never known to drink. The brothers never quarreled in public, but were known to fight between themselves privately. Apparently, they had had a fight 6 months earlier. John Ingram Brand, the local magistrate, recalled that the brothers were very possessive of their personal effects. During the trial, Ingram told the court that each used the fireplace in the home for cooking, but each made his own fire and cooked his own meals. He noted that their firewood was cut 1/2 the width of the fireplace for this purpose. Furthermore, each brother had his own flour barrel complete with padlock. Okay, you got issues? Another neighbor, John Carland, noted that the two brothers were fairly well disposed financially. He remembered that they always paid for what they bought from him right away and never quarreled with him. Neighbor George E. Willis was the first one to discover that all was not well in the Hazing home in Pubnico, August 21st, 1861. Another neighbor, John Cartlin, remembered seeing James walk by his home around 8 a.m. in the morning. Carlin was mixing some mortar for the construction job he was doing. He remembered that he spoke to Haslin in a joking manner when he said, "Your trade is suffering here." Haslin, a stonemason by trade, did not respond. Carlin recalled that Haslin was in a hurry. Haslin arrived at William's home just after 8 a.m. William told the court that James Haslin asked him to come back over to the Haslin home. William remarked, "Have you been fighting this morning, Jim?" Williams recalled that there was no reply. He went with him. They passed by Carlin's home a few minutes later, and John Carlin recalled seeing them walk by. There was no conversation exchanged between the men. On the way, William said to Haslin, "I expect you to have been fighting this morning and killed John," to which James replied, "Better for me to kill John than to let him kill me." By now they had arrived at the Haslin home. William recalled that James Haslin went into the house first. He remembered that downstairs in the home there was one big room with an adjoining bedroom. In addition, there were 2 rooms upstairs. One of the upstairs rooms was the bedroom of John Haslin, and the other room was filled with hay. Weird little house, but okay. While Williams entered the home for the first time, he recalled that he found John Haslin lying dead on the floor in a pool of blood in the main room. His head was facing and actually lying on the hearth. There was a bench lying 6 to 7 feet from the body. Williams placed his hand on the corpse and told James Haslin, "He's a dead man." Williams then asked James what happened. He recalled that James told him that John had placed a stool in his way. Sweetie, no. Honey, no. I can't read through you. Listen, it's just one story. Okay, come on. That's a good boy. Sorry. Where was I? He had placed a stool in his way, cutting his pint and using the water. Cut his pint and used his water. According to Williams, James then said that he wanted to heat some water to use for shaving. He recalled that James stepped over the body of his dead brother and went to the hearth to heat some water. Williams saw an axe on the floor and asked James who owned it. There was no reply. Next, William asked Haslin where he was when he hit his brother. James Haslin told him that he was in the bedroom the first time. Okay. James told him that he was in his bedroom at that time. Okay. Then Williams noticed another axe laying by the door and asked who owned that one. Again, James made no reply. Haslin then asked Williams if he was a constable. Williams told him that he was not, but that he would take care of him. Haslin told him that he wanted to pick up his traps at the wharf. I'm assuming lobster traps. Next, William and James Haslin left the house and went to John Cartlin's home. Cartlin told the court that William told him that Jim had killed John with an axe. He asked William if he was sure that John was dead, to which William replied, "Yes, as dead as a hammer." Okay. William left Haslin in the care of Cleveland and went to the wharf to locate John Ingram Brand, who was a local justice of the peace. After William found Brand, the two met, and along with Captain Murphy and Joseph Muse, went back to the Haslin home. The men examined the house and the body of John Haslin. Oh, God. Can't they just use first names? William noticed that the body was positioned so the head was facing easterly towards the fireplace. The men noticed blood-covered tongs lying under the body of the deceased. There was an axe about a foot from John John Hasling's hand, there was no blood on it. As well, this time, William saw a broken smoker's pipe, about 1.5 feet away from the head of the deceased. Pipes during that time were made of white clay and broke very easily when dropped. Williams did not see any broken sticks or clubs in the sticks or clubs in the area. Okay. The four men then went back to Cleveland's. There, Ingram asked Haslin what had happened. Haslin was calmly smoking his pipe. He said, "You know what has always been the problem, what has always been the trouble. What has been done can't be helped." Okay, that did not make any help. Williams, Muse, and Murphy hitched up Cleveland's horse and wagon and took Haslin to Yarmouth. Williams recalled that Haslin was quite anxious to leave the community and go to Yarmouth. The three men also took a razor and a jackknife away from Haslin. Hasling. Hasling. Whatever. Meanwhile, Brad and Cleveland stayed behind and sought out a friend of John Hasling's, Mr. Willett. Williams told the court that on the way to Yarmouth, he asked several Haslings several questions. He asked several Haslings several questions. Okay, that's not me. He told the court that Hasling told him that his brother had come at him with an axe and had flavored tongs over his head. Hasling told William that he was in the bedroom when he hit John. Hasling told him that he hit his brother with a stick as he entered the bathroom. When replied, "Where was the stick?" Hasling replied, "I don't know." Then, after James, in the custody of the High Sheriff at the Yarmouth County Jail, returned to Pubnico. Okay. They left James at the sheriff and they returned home to Pubnico. After they returned, Williams went back to the Hasling home. By now, John Hasling's body had been removed, and the subsequent murder trial At the subsequent murder trial, William told the court that he searched the home and could not find a single sign of the stick that James had said he had used to kill his brother. That night, a coroner's inquest was held in Pubnico before Matthew Jeffries, a Swiswick coroner. A verdict was returned that the deceased, John Hasling, came to his death by being shot through the head by a ball fired by his brother James, who resided in the same dwelling. James Hasling appeared before the Chief Justice of Nova Scotia Supreme Court a little over a month after the murder of John Hasling. On Tuesday, September 26, 1861, in Yarmouth, the Crown Counsellor was the Honourable John Craigton, QC, and the counsel for the defense was Charles B. Owen. The courtroom was packed with witnesses, local residents, and spectators. The pretty jury was made up of Benjamin Smith, Ezra Churchill, Joseph Crosby, Robert Dirk, William H. Gildy, William Lewis, John Miller, Stephen Perry, James Phillips Jr., David Randall, Benjamin Reading, and Samuel Saunders. I'm busy, go away. The jury was sworn in first thing that morning, and the trial lasted throughout the day. In the opening comments, Crown Counsel reviewed for the benefit of the jury the difference between willful murder and manslaughter. Craigton maintained that the murder of John Hasling was deliberate, planned action by his brother James. The first witness called by the Crown was George Williams. In his testimony, Williams entered into the evidence the fact entered into the evidence the fact already outlined. Next, the Crown called John Ingram Brand, the local justice of the peace. In his evidence, Brand told the court that when he arrived at Hasling's home, the door was open. They went inside and found John Hasling lying on his right side and quite cold. His face was towards the fireplace and his feet were facing James, Hasling's bedroom. He was lying face down on the floor on his left cheek. Brand noted that there was an axe near the body. He recalled that this axe was John Hasling's because he had seen the deceased use it on occasion. The other brother, sitting by the door, was that of the other axe sitting by the door was that of James. The men then left, locked the door, and went to find Mr. Willett, who was a friend of the deceased. The key to the Haslings' home was placed in care of John Carland. Brad told the court that around 10:30 that morning he went with Cleveland to the Haslings' home with Mr. Willett. He noted that Willett lived about 2.5 miles away from the Hasling home. Brad recalled that Willett asked Carlin to unlock the door and the men went inside. Willett asked for the body to be removed from the home, but Brad suggested that they had better wait until the coroner arrived. 2 hours later, the coroner, Matthew Jeffrey, arrived. As the men moved the deceased's head, they noticed a pair of tongs under the body. At that point, the men did not know the cause of death because of the amount of blood on the face and body. They believed that John Hasling had been killed by either a blow from an axe or a stick. After the body had been removed, the men searched the Hasling home. Carlin found a gun in James Hasling's room, and it appeared as if it had been recently discharged. It was not until after the deceased was washed that they discovered he died from a gunshot wound that had entered through the left jaw and passed out behind the ear. The deceased's face was marked with gunpowder and his eyebrows were singed. Eyebrows were singed. Brad told the court that he estimated the gun was about 4 or 5 feet from the deceased when it was discharged. If that had been any closer, the witness claimed the face would have been burnt more. Brad recalled. Okay. Brad then recalled Squir Squirrel Dantrama cut a small probe and passed it through the wound. The jaw appeared to be broken. There was a large quantity of blood. I have no doubt the deceased was shot and then his death was caused this way. Behind the door of the prisoner's room, I found a gun. It was a little damp inside, as if recently discharged. I examined the axe near the body. There was no blood on it. We looked for the ball and found its mark in the board on the side of the house facing the prisoner's bedroom door in a slanting position. I tried the range and with difficulty made it range for the mark, but found that I tried to range and was difficult made it range for the mark, but found that by partially closing the door, I could range precisely through the crack to the spot. I've subsequently requested Mr. Williams to measure the height from the sill to where the ball struck. It was 4 foot 6.5 inches. I noticed that the deceased was 5 foot 7 or 8 inches. If he had been standing, the ball could not have struck him. He must have been in a stooping position. I saw the deceased's axe behind the door. The last witness from the Crown was John Carland. Carland recalled that while Williams was looking for Brad, he asked James Hasling why he killed his brother. Hasling told him, "I had better kill him than him kill me." Cartland asked, "Was John going to kill you?" Hasling recalled, "Yes, he was coming at me with an axe." Cartland then asked Hasling how the whole thing began. Hasling told him, John was putting a bench in my way all morning. You saw yourself last winter how close he came to taking my life when he struck me with a hammer. Cartland asked him if he remembered if John said anything when he was trying to kill him, to which Haslin replied, "No, not that I can remember." Cartland recalled that James Haslin, had no marks of violence on him. He was in his shirt sleeve, and there were no marks or tears on either James or his clothing that morning. After James was taken to Yarmouth, Cleveland told the court that he went back to the Haslin home with Brad and Willett. He remembered that Hasling's face was blue and seemed as if it had been burned by gunpowder. He thought that the gun must have been very close to his face, about 4 or 5 feet given the burns. He also told the court that there was a tremendous quantity of blood around the body. Cleveland told the court that he had found the murder weapon in the bedroom. He identified it as the same gun that he had sold to James 4 or 5 years earlier. He confirmed that the gun was fired that morning, some distance from the deceased. Cleveland mentioned that the ball which caused the death was not found on Thursday. However, he told the court that he found it the next Saturday on the east side of the fireplace near the hearth. He remembered the mark it had made on the rough board near the hearth. Hearth, not hearse. Carlin had the ball that day in the courtroom, showing the court how it had been flattened after it passed through the head of the deceased, hit the wall, and bounced on the floor. When asked by the Crown to comment on the position of the deceased when he was shot, Carlin stated he could not. Carlin stated that he visited James Haslin in jail and told him that the coroner inquest found a verdict of willful murder. He told the court that Haslin told him that the murder could not have been helped. Haslin told him that John was between him. Haslin told him that John was between him and James and the outside door and was coming at him with an axe. James Haslin did not know what to do. Haslin told John that he picked up his gun, aimed it at John. John put up his hands and told him to put the gun away. He kept coming. The gun fired. Cartland told the court that John never said whether he shot his brother or not. Carlin corroborated all of this earlier in testimony given by William and Brand. He also told court, spelt with 2 C's, so it's not me, that he did not know that John Haslin died from a gunshot until he saw the blood later on the day after it had been washed. That concluded the testimony from the Crown. Each of the witnesses was thoroughly cross-examined by the defense. In his cross-examination, Owen tried to prove that the killing of John was accident or done in self-defense. From all reports, defense counsel Owens did not call any witnesses. The Crown summarized what appeared to be a solid case of willful murder. After the Crown, the defense argued that there was no doubt as to whether the death of John Haslin was from willful murder or manslaughter. Owen argued that James Haslin was entitled to this shadow of a doubt under the law. Owens then asked the jury to take a favorable view of the case and to render a merciful verdict. Following the arguments of both sides, the Crown and the defense, Chief Justice charged the jury and reviewed the difference between willful and murder and manslaughter. Following this, the jury retired, and after an hour, the jury returned to the crowded courtroom. Almost done. Jury foreman Benjamin Smith told the court that the jury had found James Haslin guilty of the murder of his brother John, but in finding its verdict, the jury had recommended mercy. Even so, Chief Justice told the court that the judgment was guilty as charged and that James Hazing was to be hanged from the neck until dead. The defense appealed the sentence, and on November 21st, 1861, the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia changed its punishment of James Haslin from death to life in prison. The Supreme Court decided to accept the motion of the defense court counsel Owens for the clemency in this case. For all reports, James Hazing died in prison. All right, some spelling errors. That is the first one. We'll do what is this? Is this like a clip of this? Why do I need to know what the next story is going to be without just going to the next story? What's happening here? This is the unsolved the Turfry murder. Okay, Captain George. Jesus, George. Remember when? Murder of Florence Gray. This is one of the heavier ones. Upcoming, the Turfry murder. The Turfry murder. Anyway, I didn't design this book, that's for sure. And that was the first story of A Matter of Murder. Not my best reading, but a story nonetheless. Alright, I'll see you guys for the next one.